combat, the worst fear was dropping your bombs, your napalm, or whatever it is you're carrying on the wrong side, your own people.
Friendly fire. Oh. All right, what do I do?
Yeah, money, they always saying this, the root of all evil. It truly is the root of all evil.
I believe it.
If you want to floor it,
Yeah.
be my guest.
Okay.
Just, floor it. You didn't really floor it all the way.
No, he was pulling out in front of me. It seems now, it feels people are more divided than ever. Like, it's the opposite of that. Everything is, this person's out to get me, or you're on this side, you're on that side. It's just, it seems worse now from a division standpoint.
It's come by so many manipulators and liars.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on today, guys? And thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of the SaltyFresh Perspective podcast. My guest today is retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force who served on 117 combat missions. He also ran a business here in Central Florida for over 50 years. He's an avid car collector and a guy who taught me what it means to be a man. My grandfather, Hudson McMurtrie.
You ready? Yep. You're going to surprise me what you're going to ask me.
Well, it's a surprise.
All right.
I didn't give you the questions beforehand.
That's all right. No questions beforehand.
All right. Well, sitting here, episode 2, with my grandfather, retired Lieutenant Colonel Hudson McMurtrie. Thank you for doing this.
Yes.
You excited a little bit?
Yeah, I never done anything like this before.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of things, but this is another new experience.
A new experience for you. Yeah. Well, you turned 90, yesterday?
90.
90.
Can you believe that?
I
can't believe it either.
Yeah. Did you think you'd make it that long?
No.
No, really?
I had a lot of opportunities not to make it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, a lot of scary things.
Yeah. What does it feel like? Does it feel the same as being 89, or does it feel any different? Or
well, it's a nature's gradual reduction of everything. Everything I'm a little short of. That it takes me twice as long to do simple tasks.
Yeah.
Especially when it's nuts and bolts and putting a carburetor together.
Oh, yeah.
And you're slowing in the mind, You
can feel the mind slowing down.
Oh, yeah. Like, I used to remember things very easily. When you were flu, you had to memorize a lot of stuff for emergency procedures and things like that.
Sure.
And you didn't have time to look at a checklist or anything like that when you're flying a fighter.
Yeah.
So it's now it's a little slow.
I think that happens, right?
happens.
It seems like it happens faster for some versus others. They lose. My grandfather across the lake lost his mind real early. Early.
I'm so lucky. I'm fortunate.
Yeah.
To be here, sitting here, and making some sense out of what we're doing.
Sure.
And you asked me, how's it feel?
Feels the same? A little different?
Like you're going slow motion.
Slow motion. Okay. Okay.
And all around. Yeah.
Well, I looked something up. So you're born in 1931, right?
Correct.
Do you know what the life expectancy was in 1931? When you were born, what was the life expectancy of people back then, do you think?
Probably 68 or so.
It was 59.
Was it? I
59. Well, I thought that was interesting. The year you were born, the life expectancy of people being at 59 years, that's, and you made it to 90.
Yeah.
In 2020, the life expectancy was 78. So you're much higher than the normal average of people, even in 2020, as far as living to 90.
Yeah. Well, I feel the Lord had a plan for me to live long, do some good things, or try to do some good things.
Well, that's good.
And hey, I'm the luckiest guy. Lucky to be here.
Yeah.
Lucky to have all the children we had, and all the children are healthy.
Yeah.
Grandchildren are healthy.
Yeah.
And so it's a wonderful world, really.
When I tell people about our family, they're surprised at how large it is, how close we all are, that we all relatively stayed in the same spot here. When I tell people about my family, it seems rare to people that families stick together and get this big for this long. Do you get that too when you talk about us all?
Yeah. I hear my friends of those that are near my age and whatnot, and so I become more thankful because they've had some tough health problems or children born with problems.
Yeah.
And then not only that, but everybody in the family is working.
Yeah.
Almost.
Almost. Yeah. As much as we can.
There's a
you know?
temporary little
Yeah.
switch everybody does when you change careers and do
Sure.
things. It's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good for you, all right? You had a few different careers. You know, you were born in West Virginia, right? What were you born in? No. Where were you born?
Born in Philadelphia,
That's
Pennsylvania.
right, Philadelphia.
In
Yeah.
Frankfurt
Frankfurt.
Hospital.
Frankfurt Hospital. Okay.
Yeah.
And how'd you end up? Because you did move to West Virginia eventually, didn't you?
Well, my mother passed away when she was only 40, and I was 8 and a half, just almost 9 when she passed away. She had a stroke. She had a stroke singing in the choir at a Methodist church, and she was the choir director.
Wow.
She was a musician, played the piano, sang, and so that drove a situation into my father. He was a good man, but he didn't have much patience with kids. I never celebrated Christmas after my mother died. I got a job when I was 12 because I was a big boy at 12.
You had to be.
Yeah, I was tall and looked like I could pass for 16. And so I got a job for 25 cents an hour. Never had a bicycle. So I had to get a job to get a bicycle because my dad wasn't into kids and things that they would like.
Huh. The first bicycle you had to work and buy yourself.
I actually bought it. Yep.
Wow.
I bought a Schwinn bicycle.
You remember the bike.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And then during the Second World War, a good friend of mine, both same age, we used to buy old bicycles and repair them and paint them and put decals on them, put tires on them, because you couldn't even buy a bicycle during the Second War.
Yeah.
And sell them.
Huh.
So we had a little
You were running a
tiny
business.
little business.
You were running a little
My
business.
buddy and I were
Bicycle restorations,
partners.
huh?
At 11 or 12 years old.
Wow. Is that where the love for old cars came from, or working on stuff like that? Where you've always had old cars around, but where did that start?
Well, just tinkering. I like mechanical things.
Yeah.
I like mechanical things. Have some kind of a longing to be involved with things that can do something with your body, or go faster, or go higher, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I kind of was born with some kind of a thing like that.
Yeah.
I had my first airplane ride when I was about 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of got me interested in aviation a little bit.
What kind of plane?
It was an old Ryan, old World War II leftover airplane this guy had.
How'd you get a ride in? Oh, someone you knew had the plane.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a patient of my father. My father was a dentist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So he invited us out to New Jersey, and he gave us a ride. He put us in my father up in front, and I was in the back, and it was 4-seater, and he wasn't really an accomplished pilot, which I didn't realize at the time. You put your life in somebody else's hands when I want to give you a ride.
Jeez.
Some person has 100 or 200 hours in an airplane. And I had to laugh at him because he says, now don't talk to me anytime I'm flying or somebody's talking to me on the radio. Don't talk to me or ask me anything, because he says, I have to have my fullest attention to fly this airplane.
I had to fully focus. Couldn't be distracted.
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Is that what led towards the love of aviation? Because obviously when the time came to go, was it always Air Force for you, or were you thinking, Army, Navy?
Yeah, that was a peculiar circumstance. But you asked about moving or going to West Virginia.
Yeah.
And I call West Virginia my home because my father had some friends who he grew up with way back when, and they had started a business in West Virginia, a theater business and a pool, a little recreational business, indoor, outdoor theaters, And so they invited us down, my father and I, after my mother died, for a little vacation at their place. And so we went every year. Well, the second year I was down, I spent the whole summer with them while my father went back. And then they asked my father, who, bless his heart, had other interests rather than raising a teenager.
Huh.
They said, we'd like to have Huddy come down and live with us, raised with my family.
Huh.
And that's how I got to West Virginia, to Buchanan, West Virginia.
Yeah. How old were you then?
Oh, it was...
Roughly.
I remember the first atomic bomb going off on one of the trips down there at a test on a radio we listened to. So it was around 47.
Yeah.
But I've actually moved there when I was a junior, or 10th grade in high school in Philadelphia, and a lousy student, didn't want to go to school. My father never knew whether I went to school or not, so I didn't go to school a lot of times. So I was headed in the wrong direction. That straightened me out big time. Wonderful family. Garland West, Oda West.
The West, yeah.
In Buchanan. And I was raised right with their kids. Slept in the same bedroom with Charlie and I. Charlie later became a state policeman. And so I went on to Wesleyan, which was right across the street from the house.
Oh, okay.
It was logical, and tuitions were, and so in the meantime, I worked in the theaters, cleaned the theaters, popcorn, ran motion picture machines, and became a general handyman because there were so many things to do. And they were all exciting things.
Yeah.
Came from a city boy to a country boy, put up hay, learned how to hook up horses, learned how to do things that I was never exposed to.
Yeah.
So I just lit up with all that stuff.
Yeah. Something about up there in the mountains, you know, people are drawn to mountains naturally, but probably going there from the city just opened up a whole new world for you, things.
Well, it did. And of course, they had a pool. I got pretty soon as I had old enough, I got my water safety stuff, the Red Cross. Then I started teaching swimming down at the pool.
I didn't know that.
Yep, and then when I went to college, I worked for the city of Philadelphia at their public pools, being a lifeguard.
Nice.
Did that
when it's warm enough.
When it was warm enough there, yeah. Short seasons.
Yeah, short swimming seasons. Yeah. And my dad was telling me the other day about sailing. Like you guys used to teach them all how to sail, you know, little sailboats and stuff. Did that start with you at a young age too? I mean, getting into sailing a little bit, or when did that start?
I knew nothing about sailing. That came later.
Later in life, you learned that one?
I was in the military, and I was always intrigued with sailing boats. And so I had an uncle who sold me in the service a little styrofoam sailboat. He must have got it through styrofoam, 10 foot long, with a little lantern sail. And I started sailing that across the Potomac River down in the Washington area, because we lived right off the Potomac down in Alexandria when I was in the service. So that got me interested, and then to really buy a decent sailboat, so I ended up moving to St. Petersburg while I was in training for Vietnam with the force. So I found a sailboat down there and parked my family down there when I was in Vietnam. But that's how I got interested in sailing. I just found it no engines. I just liked the idea of no engines and relying on your wits and the sail and the wind and nature.
Yeah.
That
calls to me recently in life, you know, with sailing, you know, thinking about, you know, getting on a boat and no motor, unless you need it if you have one, but the wind will just move you wherever you want to go, you know. And,
when you understand it.
Right. Yeah, that's the hard part.
Understand it. And a lot of it just comes from, you can't learn it in a book.
Yeah.
To understand the tacking and proper sail settings to get where you want to go.
Yeah. Was it important for you to teach that to your kids? Because my dad remembers, you know, specifically you teaching. I think he said he was 10 when you had him out there on a sailboat for the first time.
Well, all my two boys and the 3 girls we had. the two boys, we all did a lot of things together.
Yeah.
In fact, even I had this sailboat that could haul 6 people. It was a day sailor, 20 foot long. And so every weekend, when I was in the military, when I had weekends off, the kids were out of school, we'd take a trip in a sailboat.
Yeah.
We go through drawbridges, which is always awkward. You don't have a motor and trying to get underneath the drawbridge.
With the sail up.
Has a beam of or a mast of 26, 28 foot. Doesn't go under some bridges, so you have to wait till they open.
Yeah.
Anyhow, and then get to open water. It was fun.
In the river, or where you at there in St. Pete? Out on the Gulf. Okay.
Pete. We bought a house in St. Pete.
Yeah.
To leave my family in while I was going to overseas.
That's right. Yeah. So back to that. Was it always Air Force? Was it, or did you ever think? I mean, how did it go from moving from Philadelphia to West Virginia to then being in the Air Force?
Well, I didn't know anything, but I didn't want to work labor like I had been doing down in West Virginia, where we were, changing marquee on the theater after clean the theaters and stuff like that after they were closed. So the only thing I knew anything about anybody who was professional was my father, who was a dentist. And so I thought I'll take pre-den at college. Not you have dentist, it's a liberal arts, but you actually can prepare with the right courses to get into dentistry school with 2.5 years back then. This is in 1950.
Okay.
1950, you could get, and then dentistry school was about 4 years, I believe. So I worked toward that, and then when I got to my place in 2 years, because I went to summer school as well, to get all these physics and organic chemistry and all that kind of stuff, the basic science things. That was my career. So my father went to Temple University before it was Temple Dental School. So he set me up there with a little introduction. And I went up there to qualify with dexterity.
Got to be good with your hands.
Carving a piece of soap, a few things. So
you had to carve soap
to make sure that you could handle
use your fingers in the right way.
Well, back then that was one of the aptitude applications.
Yeah.
So I was walking down Broad Street in Philadelphia after that, and I had taken a train up there from West Virginia. It's a long train ride. So I had a day or two to kill. And I was walking, that evening, I was staying in a motel, and I read in the Philadelphia Bulletin, the Parade magazine, an article about the Navy Aviation Cadet Program. And it looked interesting to me, which you could go into with 2 years of college.
Okay.
So I just thought about it, that's all. So while I'm walking down Broad Street, I see an Uncle Sam Wants You sign. Navy, Air Force, and Army up these steps right off of Broad Street. And so I thought, well, I read that article. I'm going up there to ask a few questions about the Navy. I got my 2.5 years in, and the necessary requirements, the best I could figure. Well, I went up to the Navy side of the recruiting building there, and the World Series was on. And it was on a little TV screen about 6 inches big, and 8 guys were watching the World Series. And I stood around, nobody paid attention to me, and nobody paid any attention to me. So down the hall, I saw the door to the Air Force. So I thought, well, I'm wasting my time here standing around. Nobody, I come up here to find out something.
Yeah.
They're too busy with the World Series, which is a normal thing, everybody was.
Yeah.
The Air Force when I went into the Air Force, they didn't have a TV, so they immediately talked to me. And then they quickly said, I told them what I was interested in, and he says, well, you have to pass a physical, and your eyes have to be good. And he says, you wear glasses? And I said, no. If you asked me a few questions and said, well, you can try for that program, but you got a lot of things you got to accomplish before you even get in the program. First thing you do, we'll send you up to Olmsted Air Force Base in Harrisburg for a physical. I went that afternoon on a train up to Harrisburg from Philadelphia.
Right then and there, you jumped on a train and went up.
I haven't signed anything. I haven't done anything.
Right.
We'll see what it was just strictly my eyes.
Yeah.
They gave me a weird aptitude test with a broom handle to light up lights. If I could move this broom handle to light these lights in a certain way, I had an aptitude for aviation.
Okay. With a broom handle.
With a broom handle. Well, because I could coordinate my eyes and my hands together, I guess.
Yeah.
So it was a low-cost exam, but they did check my eyes and everything else in great detail.
Yeah.
So I qualified. And, he says, well, you qualify, we'll sign you up for a program. And in the meantime, he said it was at the end of the Korean War, and there was a surplus of pilots all coming back because they opened a big training program there for pilots. They never have enough. And so with that, I figured that this is interesting. I stuck with it, and then I signed, and they said, "Well, we're going to send you back to West Virginia, and when you have a class opening date, you're okay for it, and you'll get a class number by telegram." So I go back home, back to West Virginia, tell all my friends I've already joined the Air Force when I really hadn't joined the Air Force, really. And so, are you still around? Everybody else was getting drafted then.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to get drafted. I wanted to have a choice to what I went in. Because at my age, if you weren't in school, I had a draft number. I would immediately go into the Army. So I wanted to make my choice. For
be your own decision. Yeah.
I liked the looks of things there.
And
so I went and enlisted. In the meantime, which was to get me out of Buchanan, really. And so I went through basic training as an enlisted man to wait out my time for my class date. And that was like 6 months. So they kept me. I went to Sampson Air Force Base up in New York. Cold as hell in the wintertime. I was there over the winter. Beautiful in the summertime. But finally got the class date. Then I went down to, that's how I got into the Air Force. I won't go any further with that.
No, that's good.
Goes on and on and on.
Yeah, that was good. So, I'd always wondered what led to that decision. And that's interesting that you were going maybe for the Navy side first. You didn't want to get enlisted. You didn't want to get, just put anywhere. Yeah. They were probably putting your friends in the Army or wherever they would.
I was in the Army for 2 years.
Is that the least desirable option to go to the Army?
In my mind, it was.
Yeah.
I can't explain why.
Yeah.
You think it was silly because what drove me to the Navy? Yeah. Because that's the only one I read about.
Yeah.
And also, I like the uniform.
Oh, okay. You like the uniform. Okay.
I'm an officer in the Navy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, also having the choice. I think I get this from you, or I never really like to be told what to do or what not to do or whatever the case may be. But if I didn't have the choice, I think I wouldn't have liked that if I just had to go because I was drafted and that's what somebody else decided.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having the choice was probably a deciding factor as well.
Right. I tried to encourage a couple of my grandchildren to go into the military. I won't mention any names because I don't want to cause her any embarrassment. And she says, well, and she had made several parachute jumps, so she was interested in that side of things.
Yeah.
And on her own. And I says, well, I talked to the enlisted people with you. You have a college degree, and you have this, and you have a good chance if you go into the military to make a few decisions for yourself because you have a little talent of, you've already had 300 jumps.
Yeah.
Maybe you can join the demonstration team or something like that to have a woman in demonstration. And so anyhow, she says, well, would they tell me what I had to do? I says, yeah. Would I have to leave Florida? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want anybody. I want to stay in Florida. I want to stay close into Orlando with the family.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the way the game is played.
Right.
So it didn't work. And I
tried.
I talked to this recruiter who was a senior master sergeant of some sort in the Army. And he said, have her talk to me, and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of things to jump through to become that.
Yeah.
And then she could move into the officer status because you got a college graduate. So,
Yeah.
So anyhow.
How do you rise the ranks in the Air Force? Because you come in and you got to get a certain number of flight time before you can. I mean, how fast before you were in there were you flying planes? I mean, how does that timeline work?
Well, I can give you the routine.
Yeah.
If you have the time to listen to
We
me.
got plenty of time. That's the best about these long form conversations, you know?
Well, of course, I went through and I got my class date. And they signed me down to Lackland Air Force Base, what they call pre-flight.
Okay.
It was 3 months. And it was kind of a West Point setting where you had this very strong discipline. You had upperclassmen. You had to eat at the dining hall with square meals, meaning you had to bring your spoon up this way and come this way. And then you had upperclassmen picking on you and all that kind of stuff. It was a college fraternity kind of a setting.
Got it.
And then you did something wrong, you had to walk all night long on a...
Do a bunch of push-ups or those kind of things.
All that.
Yeah.
How to do push-ups and runs and stuff. So in the middle of that, I had a physical, and they discovered I had a pineal cyst. Going into more detail than I would usually talk, but and the pineal cyst says you can't fly airplanes with a pineal cyst.
What is a pineal cyst?
Well, it's near your rear end. It's on your rear end. It would sit, and about every 6 months it would act up and be very painful, and you couldn't hardly sit down.
Ouch.
So they said we have to operate on you. So I dropped out of my class. And they removed the pineal cyst. And then I moved back several classes and caught up with other classes coming through that training.
So you had to take a step backwards.
I took a step backwards.
Yeah.
And then I graduated with a class called 55E, which is intended to graduate in 55.
Okay.
So then on into primary basic training. And they were all done at civilian schools, civilians. There wasn't enough Air Force people to do training at the low level of early flight because it's a big washout rate. I mean, you may want to do that. You have the aptitude, but something
as you're going doesn't quite work out.
Doesn't work out right for what the military wants you to do.
So they save all the Air Force people for the next couple levels.
Well, they go back to the regular Air Force doing all kind of other things. Lots of things to do in the military.
Yeah.
So then you start with a PA-18, which is a Piper Cub, a cheap little Piper Cub. And the first time I ever had an opportunity to fly an airplane was with the Piper Cub. And it's very light. At top speed is probably 85 miles an hour.
Is it a double prop or single prop?
One little prop on these were Super Cubs we had, which they had 100 horsepower, as I remember. Some of the earlier ones had 60 horsepower. So there is a lot of juice. But you learn up how to fly. You learn up solo in that. First, you could have an instructor assigned. And it was out in Arizona. Up north of Tucson, I went through. And that lasts for, now I kind of forgot how long it was. It seemed like a long time. I had already bought a car at the end of pre-flight down in Tucson.
Okay.
Or down in San Antonio. So I had my own car, which rarely at that level, most guys didn't have a car yet. You know,
you're just saving your money,
well,
or
you didn't have time to fool around with the car. You just
I
had to park
see.
it. Because
Yeah.
if it was on the base, the only time you got is when you got a lot of seniority, and then you gave you a weekend off or something like that.
But you wanted your freedom when you had it.
I wanted a car.
Yeah.
I wanted a bicycle. I wanted a car.
Yeah.
So, hence, I had problems. There, my problem was it's academic training because you got to learn all about weather and reading weather maps, looking at trends in weather. You had to learn Morse code back then. So I had to use the dit, dot, dot, dit Morse code because some navigation instruments were based on Morse code.
Okay.
In flying. And it was, but my problem was after about 3 flights, I got sick.
Air sick? Air sick. Yeah.
Well, my instructor turned me. We went to the flights. They had a flight surgeon there. So I went there, the flight surgeon, and he says, well, that's not unusual. You know, he's never flown before, never moved around like that. And this is still in the PA-18.
Okay.
Well, then after just a little bit, I got over it.
More time in the air, just kind
I got
of.
sick a couple more times in the air. So I have a very easy stomach because I used to get car sick too, as far as that goes. I don't know why.
So did I. Yeah.
Well, that bothered me, and my instructor should have washed me out right there. That was grounds to wash out. But apparently, he saw something I didn't see because I thought I was going to get washed out.
Yeah.
So they kept me in a program, didn't report this. I get sick. He said, just bring a plastic bag.
Okay.
And I got over it.
Yeah.
And so that was off the back. Well, then, of course, you soloed, did the cross country and the airplane, everything you would through basic flight training. Well, out of that, I went to the next phase, which is flying a T6. That's from a Piper Cub to a T6 is a big jump.
Okay.
From a 100 horsepower engine to a 800 horsepower radial engine, a big right engine, whatever horsepower it was. I might not have been 800.
Big difference.
But anyhow, and it was a heavy airplane. It was used in all during the Second World War, called the Texan, T6 Texan.
Used for what? Transportation?
Training.
Training, okay.
Everything in the military is training.
Training.
You know,
Yeah.
Training. So, and then I got about, I think, 50 hours in the T6. Soloed it, learned acrobatics, a tiny bit of instruments work there. And then from there, that training, which that period runs about 6 months. So moving from one airplane to a T6. And by the time you're through that training, they kind of size you up what airplane you should be flying in advanced training.
Yeah.
Well, I had a great instructor, so he recommended fighters, smaller airplanes. Some people were directed into multi-engine airplanes, cargo airplanes, things like that. So that I went into fighters training in advance. They call it advanced training. I think I did. That started with a T-28 airplane, which was bigger than a T-6, heavier than a T-6, a bigger engine but a lousy engine. It had a 5-cylinder radial engine, which sounded like a damn lawnmower when you started.
Jeez.
But it was a comfortable airplane, had no air conditioning or anything else.
Yeah.
Well, then when we started to practice spins and do things like that, I started to go back into a little sick problem. But I never told anybody.
Just had your plastic bag ready?
I knew I'd be in trouble. They'd wash me out. This other instructor would not probably would follow the rules. So I carried a plastic bag, and you're in tandem. You know, the instructor is behind you in tandem in the airplane.
So they can take control if they need to, or
And, well, I never got so sick I couldn't fly.
Right.
I just got nauseated.
Yeah.
And sometimes I got over it. I didn't, it was all right.
Not tell anybody.
Yeah, but I wasn't going to talk about that. And so I managed to overcome that. Then we went into the jet phase. After in T-28s for about 45 hours, you learn formation. First formation flight did it too. There, because it's a propeller airplane.
Yeah. You got 4 other airplanes up there with you, or in formation?
On formation training, you start with 2 airplanes, and then you move into four ship formations.
Okay.
And then while you graduate, you'll join up with maybe a couple other 4-ship formations during graduation and celebration.
Oh, a little celebration.
Like that. So
okay.
you have a lot of airplanes, this guy.
Yeah.
So
then you went to jet planes.
Then into jets, and that was fun.
Yeah.
That was really fun because it had air conditioning, airplane. And when I was in training, I did this last training session in Arizona, where it's very hot in the summer. So when I went into jets, I went into Williams Air Force Base out of Phoenix, Chandler, Arizona, and went through this T-28 and T-33. So we had a lot of time in jets. And this is where you really polished off, where you get your wings at the end of this.
Okay.
So I did very well through all that. All this cadet stuff and whatnot starts to fall by the wayside. All the silly military punishments, doing push-ups and all that.
You had to work your way through all that.
Now we're really flying airplanes and learning how to do it, and learning about other aspects of aviation. Learning about how that airplane's put together. Learning emergency procedures. The bigger the airplane is, the more complex they get. So you have to have some training on how everything works.
Sure. That probably played to your love of tinkering with things and learning about things, for sure.
Yeah. Now, back then, today we all have simulators.
Yeah.
They had a simulator they had developed that you could fly to learn when you started instrument training, because it had a hood, and it sat on the thing, and it leaned one way and it leaned the other way, and that was the extent of the simulation. But it had a vertical speed indicator that worked, so you could learn how some of the instruments worked.
Okay.
That you would eventually fly in an airplane. And but they were useless things. I think I only spent 2 hours in a simulator in all my training.
Huh.
Because that was the extent of what a simulator was.
Right.
So at the end of I had interesting things. The last flight I made, my last exam flight, we had an interesting incident which I tend to stick in my mind. I had a couple of real good friends in the class. You always pal up with a couple of guys.
Yeah.
And this guy was Don Boyce, and he was on his formation check flight. And we were up in the air with my instructor, who was ex-Korean ace pilot from Korea. And he something came up on the radio while I was going through certain things I had to do to go past my flight test. And it was an accident. And they asked the nearest airplane to look to see if they could see where the airplanes went in. Airplanes.
Multiple.
This formation was on a test for formation flying, final, to graduate from school. And they lined up in a 4-ship formation to turn over the field, and then they pitched off and made a circle and landed. Would break off one at a time. They don't land together.
Okay.
So as they were approaching the field, just about 2 miles out from the runway, the third airplane, when they dropped their speed brakes, pitched up. He didn't account for it quick enough and hit the plane in front of him, and that plane hit the front of them.
Oh, my.
So the leader, the number 2, the number 3 airplanes all went in together.
Huh.
And number 4 watched the whole thing happen.
Wow.
And it was very, and so we went down and told him, we abandoned my check ride. He went down, found where the airplanes hit, made a quick report into the tower so they could send somebody out. Of course, there wouldn't be anybody alive.
Right.
So it killed 4 people.
Right as you're getting ready to
right
finish.
As I was getting,
wow.
And Don Boyce, was my best friend, was in one of those airplanes. So I had to visit his parents after that and explain what happened. But anyhow, I did it and another guy named Metcalf. That was my introduction to real aviation.
Yeah.
Things can happen.
Sure. Really close to home.
Total, nothing wrong with any equipment. It's just that
An
the
error.
pilot didn't take care of a thrust that made when the speed brakes come out. It thrusts you up. Well, when you're turning, it was in a turn. So we had kind of a tough graduation from there because of that accident. And then I went on. They recommended me, for some reason, to instead of going on to F-86s back then or F-84s or other fighters, they said they kept me right there as an instructor. So, and then I was an instructor in the same flight I went through as a student. Well, it's a whole different role. The instructor's Mr. King of everything.
Mr. Instructor, yeah.
All you guys are just cowtail to whatever they say. So now I suddenly became an instructor with wings. And then they sent me off to another school for 3 months to learn all the aspects of instruction, which was a good thing, at Craig Air Force Base. And I went down there, and now for the first time I really have some free time once in a while, where the Air Force, you aren't doing something all the time. So this is how, at that time, that's when I met my wife. That's another story.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go on with the aviation training thing.
Yeah.
Finish it up. And so I became an instructor there for several years. Well, a year till they closed the base.
Where's this base?
Was Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Chandler.
Okay, Chandler.
Actually,
Yeah.
Chandler, Arizona.
Still in Arizona.
Yeah, and they closed the base and sent me down to Del Rio, Texas, which is like the moon, living on the moon. And that's another story. Yeah.
So then, when do you finally, see combat? When are you?
Well,
how do you find out you got to go?
When there is combat.
Yeah, there wasn't any at the time.
There was. I was at a time when there was skirmishes.
Yeah.
Few things, but there was no real air-to-air combat, no bombing or anything like that
Right.
at that period of time. So it's all the military is training.
To be ready.
You can lose your life in training
Yeah.
sometimes more easier than combat.
Yeah, your best friend.
Because whether it's the Army or whatever equipment, with training, they take you up to the maximum point before it's too late to correct it.
To make sure people
to make
are
sure
ready.
You don't do that again.
Right. Like a learn the hard way approach.
Well, for instance, in flight training, early flight training, my instructor stressed the engine just failed. Well, then you, in a light plane, you're going to crash land someplace. You're not going to bail out in a Piper or a T6.
You got to bring it down.
You're going to bring it down.
Yeah.
So every flight I flew, he was going to chop the engine. I had to make a decision and take it all the way down to round out or almost within 50 feet of the ground to make sure I got into that field. Best training I ever had.
Yeah.
Because I'm prepared. It's not a panic when the engine stops.
Yeah.
If you never go through that, it's,
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, you're going to panic somewhat.
Yeah, being able to keep calm in a high-pressured situation.
And what's important to you at the time?
Right.
Keeping the airplane flying. Back then, there were prop airplanes. They actually flew with no hydraulics and stuff. So it's not like hydraulics failed. You can't fly the airplane like the planes came after that.
Yeah.
Where all the controls were hydraulic controlled. The engine stops, the hydraulic stops, you're a rock. You drop like a rock.
Just drop out of the sky.
It was light planes. That's what he taught me.
Yeah.
And it was great. Not everybody did that to their students.
Did it feel easier in lighter planes to keep them more controlled versus when you started getting into those heavier airplanes? Or
No.
doesn't make much of a difference?
In fact, when you get into heavier airplanes, the controls work easier because they're boosted controls. It's like power steering and no power steering.
Oh, okay, more power. Yeah.
So, now I move the stick 3/4 of an inch. I've just done a roll.
Where before you had to...
you roll it up, you have to push the rudder in, you do this, you do that, and make the roll come out decent. It's like a barrel roll.
Okay.
A barrel roll is a difficult roll to do it right.
Sure.
Where you pull no extra G's and you're upside down.
Yeah.
So my instructor told me early in flight, in the T6, if you can do a barrel roll without your headset moving off the dashboard up in the front, you pull no G's and you do a complete roll and that stays there, you've done a good barrel roll.
Okay. The headset was
hard
the
to
test.
do
Yeah.
because you first start with back pressure, then forward pressure, the AR pressure.
Yeah. Oh, you're all right. There you go, right
You're
there.
moving around, so it's really hard to do a barrel roll.
Yeah.
And I would practice until I finally could do a barrel roll and pull no other than sitting in my living room.
Wow.
And be upside down.
Wow.
So it sounds silly, but to learn your controls, what difference between you're upside down or what?
Sure.
Because things reverse on you when you're upside down.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's a small point, but
yeah. Well, that's good. Do you think the time and the stuff you learned there, I mean, when it was time to leave and you moved on to other businesses and you went back with obviously spending more time with your family, but do you think that the things you learned there helped you, in your real estate career or past there? Because that seems...
But even before that, when you're an instructor on something as complex as flying an airplane,
sure,
even though you have your wings and you've passed it, you can fly an airplane from point B to point A, wherever you want it to go, and land it. And you learn to find points from other people's mistakes. Because when I had students, and I would have 4 students to take through a training session for 6 months, 4 students. I'd fly every morning, and with half the students, 2 flights in the morning on training flights, and they would go to class in the afternoon, then reverse it the next day. So everybody would continue to fly at least every other day through the training sessions. This was in jets now, back in the jet time.
Yeah.
But by training, you've seen every mistake you could make in aviation, whether it's closure control, or coming up in formation, or just plain old landing at night. Sometimes it's stress. Landing in a weather. We didn't have much weather in Arizona, but we simulated
other than hot.
weather. We simulated weather by pulling the hood over the person like they couldn't see out.
Oh, by messing with their visibility.
There was a lot of instrument training I hadn't even mentioned. It's good to learn how to do all bad weather flying.
You probably learn a lot more about people than too, teaching them, all the things that you just went through. Being an instructor, you learn some things about how people operate a little bit as well.
Well, it's really hard because you get attached to these students, and you find that in formation, we frequently wash people out because they couldn't be in an airplane and come up and join up where you're a foot or 2 foot from another airplane.
Yeah. Couldn't handle the pressure.
Couldn't handle the closure control. So instead of anticipating, because in that type of jet we had a T-33, they had an engine, one of the original jet engines in it, and if you pulled the power off, you couldn't get it back. So, for instance, you're landing, and you pull the power clear back to idle. To get the power up to stay flying or to go around, as I recall, you could count to about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to have no power, even though you were descending. So you have to anticipate that. The airplane, the T-33, was very clean. So when you pull the power back, it didn't slow down. Like airplanes with props, it's easier to fly formation because it's like a big brake. When it goes slow, it slows the airplane.
Okay.
With a jet, you pull the power back. Then you had to remember to put it back on before you really needed it and anticipate it because you couldn't get it until you anticipated a long lag time between the time you pulled the power back.
And people couldn't handle that in
it was
training.
hard to coordinate that.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't cope with it. So and they still got their wings, but they went to cargo airplanes, where they didn't fly formation, stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So they maybe go elsewhere versus fighter pilot.
They didn't wash them out.
Okay. Use them elsewhere.
But they just lost them from the program. I didn't mean to go back to that because I haven't answered your question.
No, that's fine. That's fine. When you talked about, your some of your grandkids going, you and I never had that conversation about going in the Army or the military or anything like that. Wasn't me and you, but it never spoke to me. If anything, it was the opposite because for me, Iraq War has been going on since I was a little kid. I didn't want to go and fight in somebody else's, mess.
Sure.
Does that make sense a little bit to where people might think that way?
Makes sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
If my is in that age, I don't know. I can't understand. Everybody comes from a different. I don't know how to put it. Some people want to do that because they want to let the military teach them to fly an airplane.
Sure.
They want the military to teach them something.
Yeah.
And it isn't all cream because you're teaching you something that's you may have to do something you don't want to do.
Right.
You're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
You're signed up. You swear to it.
Did you have that moment where there was something you had to do that you didn't want to, that you can remember?
All the time.
All the time. Yeah.
In combat. It's pretty. It's not any fun to strafe a town and watch the people running.
Yeah, from the air. Yeah.
From the air, and you're pulling the trigger.
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't imagine that's fun.
It's no fun to be called in on a strike when there's an Army platoon overrun by Vietnamese. They can't get out of it. They're all around, and that's what we were there for, is to take the bad guys out.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to find them sometimes.
Sure.
To know which side is the bad guys.
Yeah.
The worst fear I had in combat, the worst fear was dropping your bombs, your napalm, or whatever it is you're carrying on the wrong side, your own people.
Friendly fire.
Because there's a lot of times you're told to fire, another airplane directs you in there, but the mistake can be made. It never happened to me, but it happened to other people.
Yeah.
And you just don't, you don't forget that.
Yeah. How could you sleep at night, after something like that?
So my worst fear, because you're flying an instrument designed to kill people.
Yeah.
You've got all kind of armament on there to do it with. And it takes moving a switch, pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And you're directed to do that, to eliminate this town because of some reason to go there.
No.
A lot of times you don't know what the reason is. Nobody explains anything to you.
Yeah.
This is their target.
That's the hard part. That would be the hard part for me is, well, why am I doing this? And if they aren't giving you that information, for the right reason, they, maybe they don't know.
You find out that this is what all that training is for. All that year and a half, 2 years of practice is to do that. That's what you're there for.
Yeah.
And why? Because they're going to kill you, or they're going to make the bombs, or they're going to deliver the bombs. They have airplanes. Back early in Vietnam, they had the MiGs in there. The Russians were running.
That's right.
And we had a 2-to-1, even though the airplane was not quite as good as the MiG, very honestly, as far as maneuverable go. Each airplane has its design, fighters are designed for a purpose, and sometimes you have to fly them not in that purpose, so they don't fly as well. In other words, during the Korean War, they had the philosophy of the military was build an airplane that does everything. For instance, a classic thing is the F-4 or other fighters. I flew the F-4. Well, it's good for air defense. It's not good for ground support, like I've just talked about, which most of the flying I've done was direct ground support, not dropping bombs from way up in the air like a bomber does.
Being close.
You got to get down there in the jungle.
Yeah.
I had come through. I had some things in the F-4 that I actually had grass stain on the bottom of the airplane where I went through top of a few trees.
That low, you're dragging.
Oh hell yeah!
My.
You're down there. You're down there with them.
Yeah, well, that puts you in range of.
Oh, everybody's shooting at you.
Yeah.
Everybody's shooting at you.
Yeah.
But that's all small arms fire.
Right.
And you have other missions that you are at altitude. You come in with 500-pound bombs. The F-4 can carry almost 500. Much more than a B-17 can carry.
16 500-pound bombs?
Yeah.
Wow.
Put all stations everywhere.
Jeez.
4, 8, 16. Yeah. 500-pound bombs. And along with that, you had rockets on the end of the wings.
Yeah.
For shooting other airplanes down.
Yeah.
Called Sidewinders. And you had AIM-9s, which were another special thing that flew and knocked an airplane out when you couldn't see it. It was 10 miles away. It had a radar system on it. That,
built into it.
Built into it and into your airplane. And
wow.
You find that airplane coming at you 20 miles out. And you release that rocket with a guidance system. This is back now, and this is 1968, 69.
Okay.
And it takes the airplane out. You never see it. You didn't know you shot an airplane down.
You just saw it on the radar, or somebody tells you it's coming in, and
the other radar you're in contact with says you have bogeys coming in.
Yeah.
At certain 2 o'clock at 30 miles out. We know they're bogeys. There was no question because the other airplanes were flying. You don't want to shoot down your own airplane.
No.
So they kept things straight. And you have to. It's not like the old days where you were in dogfights.
Yeah, shooting, rounds at people in the air.
They're fun. They're fun to fly in, and they're good for chasing. You chase each other until you get right in the right shot. And we practice that in training, but it's no place for it.
Yeah.
So it changes the whole mission of airplanes.
As technology advanced.
And now we're going through, why do we need these airplanes? Well, we can drop drones all over the world, every place we want them.
Yeah.
So, but still you have to have somebody there with certain things that can see, that can, it's...
No. That drone warfare, it just, you go way back, it used to be, they'd line up in a line and shoot at each other, and now they're at the point to where, fast forward all the way till now to where they could be really far away controlling things via remote control. And so that's what's making the decision is you looking at it.
I know it's not classified, but it's a sensitive thing. I met a young man up in Ohio when I was up visiting Scott, who operated drones from Ohio. Take out targets in Afghanistan. Take out targets. Hit automobiles. Drone operator. Not a pilot.
Drone operator.
He just is good at games. It's a war game, and it's a real one.
Yeah. No.
And that's going on. We can do it from anywhere.
No. It seems like back then, the military was a way out of certain situations. For you, it was you didn't want to do manual labor, and, you had a good opportunity to get into there and move on. It seems like that was a way that people were able to escape coal mines or escape different things to get out of the situation that they're in. But now it seems, I don't know, just the opportunities are different, now than I think a lot of people had back then.
Well, I look at that young man that I talked to, and he couldn't discuss a lot of things, but he touched around the edges. And he's enlisted. He's not an officer. And to have the capability of eliminating and killing. Somebody else launches a drone.
Yeah.
Once it's airborne and it's in the contact that he needs to have on his screen, sees what he needs to see.
Yeah.
And direct all this. It's war will never be like it was.
Sure.
Thank God.
Like a lot of things.
That's
thank
one.
God.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I can't think of. I watch these old Civil War things and watch these people directly shoot at each other while they're standing there.
Ah. And then reload in a line.
And it takes them 3 minutes to reload their rifle that they get one shot out of.
And then before that, it was, hand-to-hand sword, like looking at people in the face, you go eyeball to eyeball. That would be something. That would be something.
It's amazing because how we build on every generation. We build because they look at the internet. Look at the wheel.
Yeah.
Let's go way back.
Yeah.
I want to get this product over here, and I have a lever. I can move it 2 foot at a time, or I can make something that'll skid on. It might get round, and then I need something that I can grab hold to it where I can pull it like a wagon. It starts there, and it ends up where we're at today.
Yeah.
With that basic. But you're building on every generation's ability to know something.
Yeah.
All this stuff was around there to do what we did, but your mind couldn't grasp out to find, but it grasped far enough to make all these gradual improvements.
Sure. It seems like it's something built into humans where it's the continual approach to make things better, whether it's technology or medicine or whatever the case may be. But do you fear that we've gone too far at all? I mean, is there any concerns that you have that some of this, might be this drone capability? Yeah, it makes it easier because people don't have to fight face to face, but it also makes it a little more worrisome that those things are out there. But even with like technology and cell phones and stuff like that, I think we might be losing a little bit of certain things because of how easy stuff is now, whether it's getting food or anything.
I think it hardens you. You don't have any sensitiveness of pain.
Yeah.
Or trouble.
Yeah.
But the improvements, I'm not looking at warfare, but as much as, I heard somebody speak the other day on television. He's a black man. He's passed away. His name was Kennedy. And he sat there and he talked in an interview with Mark, can't remember his last name. Anyhow, he does very good interviews on Fox about how things are today, kind of questioning like we're starting to talk.
Yeah.
And I went through some interesting philosophies of why are we there? Why are we doing this? Where do these people come from? And all the things you talk about, easy to do, we have models for doing it. You're playing war games. Your kids are playing the same game that they're actually doing.
Yeah.
And it's fun to play Battleship. We had
Battleship
and stuff like that, and play these games, and then play these when we're chasing. Now they have in the shopping centers places where you can play the game of real escaping and shooting people.
Yeah, like a virtual reality type.
A virtual reality where really everything is made so virtual, and it's kind of a heartless.
Yeah.
Not mindless. It takes a lot of mind to do it, but it's hard to explain.
No.
Hard to answer that.
No.
But the more complex things get, I find in my 90 years of age, it's very difficult to adapt to simple computer instructions.
Sure.
Just today
helped
me.
Some tech support.
Where I was I needed text. You walked in the door, and I says, I said, it's asked me to activate cookies.
Cookies, yeah.
And I said, cookies? Well, that does something to expedite things on a computer,
Yeah.
but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I thought cookies were for eating, you know?
Yeah, and things like that, or abbreviations that you know about instructions.
Sure.
I read the instructions. Well, I have to go find out what that is they're talking about.
Yeah.
And by the time you're doing that, you fool around trying to do a simple task. I do.
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up in it. But if I ask my 7-year-old great-grandson to do this and tell him what I want to do, it's boom, 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 boom.
Yep, easy.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. I think it's good and it's bad. I got young kids. I got 8 and 5, and a lot of the kids around them, they spend so much time on these devices, whether it's an iPad or a computer, and they're learning things, but I think in some cases they're not learning other things as far as how to have a communication with somebody. I think that's changing over the course of technology.
How do we look at somebody? Because whether it's built into all of us to look at somebody and kind of interpret. You can't mind reader,
right?
But you can see what's going to happen.
Right.
This guy or this woman.
Yeah.
And talking to them and see what you've said is something hostile to them or agreeable.
Yeah.
And this is rather than just hitting you, boom, boom, boom. It's a clue. There's clues now that you can get otherwise through computers that are beyond my understanding.
Right.
Ask this, say yes or say no. Say yes or no. After you say yes or no, they know kind of how you think.
Sure.
So there's other ways of getting that, but it's that's the amazing thing. We're just talking about how things advance.
Yeah.
And how we are advancing.
Yeah.
And finding out marketing is enough to blow your mind today, in today's world.
And the money that companies are making, because of everything that they track, through your cell phones. And, it's pretty common knowledge that all these microphones around on your phone, or if you have any of those devices, that they're picking up things that you're saying, and selling that information to. It's all about making money. You're not trying to hide anything, but it opens up an interesting privacy related conversation. And and how come all these companies can, like Apple's worth $1 trillion, and a lot of it is because of the data they're collecting, because everybody has an iPhone. But
that's where progression starts. If you make something that pleases the other person, you can sell it. Not to take advantage, it's just to move a product.
Right.
But it's just like taking a job. Well, take you, for instance. You didn't go to college.
No.
But you're a creative guy. You take a job of moving boxes around for a company in a retail. Well, you hang on a little longer. You spend an hour longer. Is there anything else I could do? Or have you said to the boss, have you ever thought of piling over here rather than here? You ever did this? And you're pleasing somebody.
Yeah.
To get ahead of the world, you have to please somebody. Now it's how do I artificially please them and to get around them?
Yeah.
But in real life and the way it really is, things that you manipulate will come back on you.
Sure.
Always.
Sure.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Good for now. Good to take it. Good to steal that money. Good to do whatever they're doing.
Short term.
But the whole idea of I've had this job for 50 years and I'm working at the same thing I'm doing. How do you climb? You have to please somebody.
Yeah.
You have to please them through, this makes us a little more money in the company.
Yeah.
Now I don't have to have this much inventory. We have another way to handle it. All these ways, but progression for people doesn't happen unless you're pleasing somebody.
Right.
It's not lying to them.
No.
The problem today is the straight skinny. You know that.
Yeah.
You know that. I all get sucked into other things that sound wonderful.
Yeah.
But when you get down to the bottom line,
it's not real.
it's wonderful for a year, but now
Yeah.
I've lost everything I have because I invested in this thing.
Yeah. For me, it was always people seem to be the answer. And if you're chasing making a lot of money or whatever it is that you're chasing, the better you were with people, it seemed to make things easier. If you could look somebody in the eye and kind of figure out what it is they might like, then you could, play towards that a little bit. It's not manipulation, it's just being observant. But I think that's the fear of some, is that people don't know how to do that anymore.
And I started you as a watched your career and how well, because you jumped up from that position to another position, then the store manager, then the district manager, because you were making things work. You were pleasing your bosses. You were making some additional profitability because you did this. So you're still going to have a year-end bonus. But nothing happens if you run around like a sour grapes and everything's wrong with everybody. Oh, this is a virus. I mean, the end of the world's coming. So.
People like to play victim, where it's not my fault that something's not going well. It's somebody else's fault.
It's a skilled technique for doing what? For destruction.
Well, for me, it was, I could continue on and continue, finding ways for these companies to make more money. And, by the time I was 28, I think I had a team of 1,000 people, and I was responsible for like $100 million. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, to keep going, the things that you sacrifice, 50, 60, 65 hours a week, flying all over the place and being away from your family, it didn't seem... I like to talk to you. I like to talk to people that have been there and seen things. I think that helps shape your own perspective. But for me, it just didn't seem like those people were ultimately happy at the end of the day. They missed a lot.
It's not the money.
It's
not the money.
What is it? Well, what's the secret to being happy? Because so many people aren't,
Amen. Amen to that. Because, money... They always saying this, the root of all evil. It truly is the root of all evil.
I believe it.
It's also the short term. It's a root of what you might say success. Well, then what is success?
Sure.
Success to you, success to me, success to this person.
Different.
It isn't money.
It's
to have a new car, to have a fancy car like that. that makes me happy. Because when I started on that car, I was going to keep it simple, original. Well, I've done that before with other cars, to make them original.
The Jeep, and you kept that one original.
Have no air conditioning, you start to think, I like to have some of the pleasures.
So you decided to put a Corvette motor in that thing.
Well, I decided I was going to do more than that Corvette motor. I took that car down to every nut, bolt, re-welded the frame, re-extended the frame, put that Corvette engine in there. I put the power brake system. I have an automatic power brake system. It's an electric system, the latest state-of-the-art that's in cars today. Well, after two years, it's not state-of-the-art because I did that 10 years ago.
That state-of-the-art goes away quickly in today's days.
But it still looks like the original car. On the outside. Everything's original.
Is that considered a resto mod?
That's a resto mod.
Resto mod.
I don't like the word, but it's a resto mod.
It's
really descriptive.
Looks original, but on the inside, different.
I wanted to keep it that way. But I wanted it to run 140 mile an hour if I wanted to. So, I already do that once or twice when the opportunity
arises
put me
itself.
In jail. But anyhow,
does that remind you of being in an airplane, or does that remind you of
exciting?
But you probably had some of that same excitement feeling when you were flying airplanes and doing. But to have something now, like you said, brings you the happiness of something that you enjoy to do.
It's something I had a hand in building.
You didn't just go buy it off a lot somewhere,
Even down to the last little thing on that car, I modified.
Makes you appreciate it
but it
more.
doesn't know. You don't know it from visual.
Right.
You know it when you push the gas. You know it when you push the brake. You know it when you grab the steering wheel and want to turn fast.
Yeah.
I put additional stabilizers in that underneath.
Things you had to figure out.
And some of them are mistakes. Some I took out. Some I added. That was back when I had a lot of money to do those things.
Back when you were chasing money.
No, but I'm just as happy.
Yeah, that's good. So this car made it. What was the TV show on Disney Plus? What is the name?
Space.
The Space Show. Wow. It's got a. That's skipping my mind right now. That's terrible. But anyways, the car is a little bit famous.
Terrible because that car made me $1,400.
Made you some money from putting it in
between that car and that car.
The Right Stuff. It's called The Right Stuff. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Out right now.
Series, on Disney Plus right now.
Thanks for remembering.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. But keeping it original on the outside, they used this and they used what? The Corvair, or they used two of your cars, didn't they?
They used that Corvair there.
Yeah.
And but then they used this in 3 or 4 different shots. But when I saw the movie, it's pathetic because if you blink, you miss it.
Yeah. I had to watch it a couple times. I'm like, there's the back of it right there. There's the back.
Well, but I'll tell you, it's an eye-opener to see the difficulty of making that movie.
Sure.
We did a beach scene. It took all day. At least 200 people were involved between the people who cook for you on the shoots, the moving stuff around in the sand. And you get stuck over there, and that got stuck in the sand over Cocoa Beach when
all
they were
the
making
salt
that shot.
too. Ooh.
And the scare of salt, beating your car up.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, but it was a real experience to see. And then the whole scene was over with. That they spent a day on faster than I could, like a minute or two.
Yeah, and it might only be 5 seconds in the show.
Then there's some scenes they shot 10 times, and it was cut out in the movie, in the final movie.
Yeah.
So that's a hell of an expensive process.
Making
movies.
Oh yeah.
Or videos, or whatever you want to call it.
A lot of money to be made, but a lot of money to be lost. And it seems like now they can't really work. So many people can't work in those industries now because they can't get 200 people together, So did you ever think you'd see something like this virus? I mean, obviously
nobody has.
No.
I have my own ideas about how it all happened.
Yeah.
It's all been in the plan. I've dealt with Chinese I liked, just like anybody else. But in the business world and in the survival world, they're the worst possible enemy you could have, because what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're doing, all is leading to some eventual result that you don't know what it's going to be.
Wow. All planned out.
Yeah. And planned way ahead with power planned. I mean, only China can position something like this happening. Don't have to go to war. Destroy our economy. Destroy Italy's economy. So everybody's economy. Puts them in a hell of a power position.
Yeah.
They're number one. They're going to be number one.
Yeah. Well, they've been making all our everything for as long as I've been alive. I mean, medicine, everything comes from China.
No, it started in the university and education system in this country. To have us accept and roll over so many little things, everyone building on a plan.
Yeah.
A plan they have. People that you trust. It's complex.
Yeah.
It's so complex, but it started back when I think it was Carter that gave away the Panama Canal because China could maintain the Panama Canal.
For trade, for shipping, for everything.
Yeah, now they got everything in excess.
Yeah.
Before they had, just one thing after another after another. Oh, yeah. It's greed on our part that led to this indirectly.
Yeah.
Why? I could make that object, make more money, make more profit, have it made in China.
Yeah.
They're ready, willing, and able.
Yeah. And back to companies chasing money, it makes sense for them,
It makes sense.
Yeah.
They don't care if they lose all the automaking facilities. Way back when they did that, years and years and years ago.
Well, back before that, I was reading a little bit about Hudson, because that's a Hudson brand car. They were making the guns for Navy ships. They had to cease production to make everything, they had to make 33,000 of those, whatever caliber it is that they put on those ships. But now you go to Michigan, I don't know what it's like now, but I mean, for a long time, there was nothing going on there. And, you had all these major car companies, and then everything shipped off, all the work, all the everything.
Most all the landing craft in the Second World War had Hudson engines on them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Ah.
I went to a Hudson museum, and it went into, they closed all production down, like all the automobile, Ford, everybody did.
Yeah.
Jeeps and make all kinds of.
All military stuff they had
all
to make.
military stuff.
Yeah.
Just a phenomenon that, during the Second War, you think a country could go from nothing to making thousands of airplanes.
Yeah, quickly.
This country could do anything in that present mentality.
Yeah.
But couldn't bring that car back. They tried to bring it back after the Second World War.
Yeah.
And they brought it back. But along came Toyota, and along came other cars that were cheaper. Along came unification of one company taking over another company.
Yeah. AMC bought out Hudson, I thought I was reading. Yeah.
It was American Motors.
Yeah. And then Chrysler, ended up with everybody. Yeah.
And then Hudson even started making Nashes when Nashes got in trouble.
Oh, Nash, yeah.
So they made it the last couple of Nash runs. Hudson survived out of a few car companies. Like Nash was a good car.
Yeah.
My father had a Nash.
Oh, okay.
And I inherited that car for 2 years, way back sometime.
Yeah.
And it looked like a bathtub. In fact, I remember when that car came out.
Yeah.
I was stationed in Andrews Air Force Base.
What year is that one? That's a
52.
52, okay.
1952 Hudson Hornet.
Okay.
And that car came out. I thought it was the ugliest car I've ever seen.
Really?
I did.
Huh.
No, I think it's the most beautiful car I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's how much you can change.
That's how much your mind will change. Yeah. Wow. Or your perspective will change, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Well, how'd your dad die? How old was he?
He was 86.
86. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He lost his facilities of thinking. Lost about 81. And then he went downhill very quickly. My mother, my stepmother, took great care of him. And she lived to be 92. And she was wonderful. She was a wonderful woman. Took care of my dad very well. And
yeah. One of my biggest fears is regret. To be 90 years old, hopefully, and look back and regret something that I could have done, should have done, or something that I did that I wish I hadn't done. Do you think that he had any, as far as that you know of?
my father?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
What do you think?
I don't think he wanted to be a dentist.
Really?
Because I can remember before my mother died, my father had a good dental practice. But he would find excuses to do everything but work.
Oh, really?
He'd go out and paint, or he'd fix on a house. He'd rather do physical work.
Anything but be a dentist or go work on patients.
But no, he did.
Yeah.
He did. You asked me a question.
Yeah.
And I remember that.
Wow.
And he'd have people in the waiting room, and he'd be out piddling around with an engine on a car or something like that.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
What about you? Anything that you wish you could have done or would have done differently? Or
I am so blessed.
Yeah.
Because I usually moved on everything, even though it was almost impossible. We're sitting on the house I have here.
Yeah.
that no way possible that I could have purchased this as a major in the Air Force. How did that happen? It happened because, you know, every once in a while the breaks happen. And the break was that the seller really wanted to sell this. This was shown to me by a realtor after I found the property. And he said, "You can't afford that house." The realtor told me. He was a retired Army colonel. He said, "You can't afford that house. You've got a major. I know what majors make." I said, "Well, that may be. I want to see it." Oh, he reluctantly, very reluctantly, took his time to show me this house over here that I'm in. And we let it go. Never followed through with the damn thing. So I inadvertently was fortunate enough to meet the owner of the house. Did I ever tell you this story?
I don't think so.
Well, I brought all the kids, all my 5 kids over here to look at this house and Gene. And my wife is pretty strict about things. So the kids were polite. And they arrived here, didn't run around like a bunch of monkeys. And followed us around in every room, didn't go off in all the rooms of the house where you lost track of them. And he liked my family. He said, your kids actually do what you tell them. You tell them to do this. So he's showing me the house. He and his wife. Bottom line is, all this led to being able to make a transaction on this house. And this is how it happened. He had bought a motorhome and recently retired from some kind of a leader in a union negotiator is what he was. So he knew how to negotiate. He knew people well. And a lot of people didn't like him because he was kind of a tough number. But he liked us. Like Gene, just a little bit of time that we spent looking at the house 2 or 3 times. And finally, I left Gene. I come over here myself. She had to take care of the kids, get them to school. And I walked over here. I come over and walked down the long driveway. And he was home. He says, "Young man, come on in here." He says, "What can I do to help you buy this house?" It was on realtor had it. And I said, "Here's my problem, Mr. Schmidt." I said, I own a house in Virginia. I own a house in St. Petersburg. I just had a house in California because I was moved around in the military. And so I'm house poor. He says, "Well, how fast can you sell those houses?" And I says, "Well, that 6 months to a year to sell a house, to be sure. You can't. The market wasn't real hot at the time."
Right.
And he says, "How much money do you have?" Very straight. How much cash do you have? But didn't say much cash. And I thought a minute. I says, "Oh, I think I have about 100. I have about $8,000 cash." I told him straight up. No messing around, beating the bush, manipulation.
Here's what I got.
Here's what I got. But I have these assets, which I'm willing to, I would get rid of, but I just can't do it. He says, "Well, I have to have at least $20,000, and I'll carry the mortgage. But I want $20,000. You need to have $20,000 to guarantee me that I've sold my house." And this is how we talked. And I said, well, even when I said I had it was 8 to 10,000, I made a comment like that. I really was embarrassed because I didn't have that much cash, but I had available to the cash if I cashed in my insurance policy or loaned on my insurance policy. So what I ended up doing is working out a deal. he and I together, that I would come up with $10,000 cash. Within 12 months, I have to give him another $15,000 because that's the equity I figured I would get out of the houses I would sell. And then he would carry the mortgage for the rest of the time. He says, I don't need money. I just want to get out in my motor home and drive to Alaska. That was my goal.
That's what he wanted to do.
That's what he wanted to do.
He wanted to motor home it to Alaska.
Right. So it was a fortunate situation that I would find a property like this and somebody like that.
Sure.
So we put the deal together verbally.
Yeah.
And then I called up my realtor and I says, I want you to write up an offer on this house, a contract. I didn't say offer. I said it's a contract. And I said, this is what you want to write. I wasn't in real estate yet then, but this is kind of what I said. I'm going to give him $10,000 cash to get into this house. He's going to, I will sign a note for $10,000 in 12 months, 13, what did I say, 15,000. And then he would carry the mortgage at, I don't remember the interest rate now, but anyhow, the interest rate was a normal interest rate until it was paid up in 20 years.
The 20-year mortgage?
Yeah. So it all worked out.
Yeah.
My realtor said, you're nuts. Nobody'd go along with something like that.
He didn't know that you'd been having these conversations with him? You're over here by yourself.
If I relied on him, I'd never owned this property.
You would have never gotten this place.
Because it's hard to have a lot of things work in concert. So it was interesting because then Mr. Schmidt, we sold the houses, we did all the thing, and time period. I wanted to raise my children here because it was an ideal place. It was on the water.
Had the lake.
It was a nice community. It was good schools. Everything else was right. And they loved it. The only problem was it was a 2-bedroom house and I had 5 children.
Minor problem.
I didn't worry about that because I says, I can adjust that.
Yeah.
And so hence I've adjusted it so many times.
Yeah.
Now I have a house with 2 people that can handle a lot more.
Yeah.
So it's too big.
Yeah.
But I love it. I'm staying here. We've lived here 53 years now. It's a long time.
It's funny sitting here talking to you, how many things just thinking about your life could have gone a different way. You know, if they weren't watching TV when you walked in, you might have went to the Navy. If you didn't meet this guy here, you know, my parents met on this lake. Maybe I wouldn't have been here if you never got this house.
That's right. You would have been. So everything.
It's interesting hearing that from you and thinking about what could have been.
My life is full of incidents like that. A lot in the flying business. A lot of things that I could have gone the wrong way. A lot of stupid things we did, which were fun things, but we got away with it. A lot of things in aviation that happened to me that could have gone very bad. Situations. And I don't know. I always felt the good Lord was looking after me. And I was intended to do some good somewhere along my life in a later life. He wanted me to hang around a little longer.
Yeah.
For whatever reasons.
Yeah.
And so it just didn't happen. Something happened for me. People been very good to me.
Yeah.
You can't be you gotta care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for real, not pretending to care for the right reason, you know.
And you can't pretend that. It's,
no.
But
I think people can smell when you're pretending, you know. You should be able to pick up on that when someone's not being as genuine as they should be.
But something in my being, I always look at the best side of everything. I don't look at all the ramifications if this doesn't go right. I do, but it doesn't affect
not as
my
much.
decision.
Yeah, you try to weigh the good versus what bad could happen.
But I always believe what the guy's telling me. Now, I'm not a sucker.
Yeah.
Because I'll listen.
Yeah.
And maybe get a clue that this is a song and a dance.
Sure.
But makes me happy to not be sour grapes. I'm never sour grapes on anything.
Be more
Very
optimistic,
rare.
with the individual.
I try not to be.
Yeah.
I should say.
But it seems now it feels people are more divided than ever. Like, it's the opposite of that. Everything is, this person's out to get me, or you're on this side, you're on that side. It seems worse now from a division standpoint.
It's come by so many manipulators and liars.
Yeah. That's the problem I think people are realizing with, whether it's politicians or whatever it is, that so many of them just flat out lie, for a long time. They've been pretty good at lying to people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I won't get into politics over this.
I know people don't like to get into it.
I could be in it a long time.
Yeah,
There's a lot of feelings, but
half
the people out there say, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about."
Well, that's with everything, and you can go down the line. Somebody will have one opinion and somebody will have a different one. But it just seems that the better option is to accept that people have different opinions. You said it earlier. The way you think about things is different than the way somebody else thinks about things because of their circumstance. Yeah. But it just seems, and it's a harder time, for me as I'm raising kids, trying to think about how to navigate all of that. It feels like a different world. But I think people have probably said that all along the way. Like, oh, your kids are going to have it the worst, or your kids are going to have it the worst. That seems like a common thing.
All the old people.
Yeah.
I can remember when I first painted. Oh, brother.
What?
I get these damn cramps.
Oh.
That come along just out of the blue.
Out of the blue while you're sitting still, huh?
Yeah.
Ouch.
It's in your thigh. It really hurts.
Yeah.
It just comes out of the blue.
Yeah.
I moved here a certain way or sat too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some potassium in there, maybe.
I'm sorry.
Banana.
Do that while we're doing a recording.
You know what? That's fine.
It's over.
It's over.
Thank God it's over.
Jeez. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what were you saying?
I don't know. My pain
pain took it away. What were we saying? I was saying about the divide of people. I don't know. I don't remember. You were going somewhere. I was tracking with you for a second. Then you made me worried. I thought your chair was collapsing or something.
No, I get those things. I get them sometimes in the morning usually.
It seems like the body starts to fail you. It seems like over time, slowly diminishes. That's an inevitable thing. But when you were 30, 40, did you think about that as far as no
I'll live forever.
Well, that was the thought, that you're going to live for forever.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
There are scary things that most of the time I says, it's going to work out.
I'll be all right. Yeah. I have that similar approach. It'll work out. I'll be all right.
Yep. Just keep your eyes and ears open. And try to do the right thing.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yep.
Try to do the right thing.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun.
Good.
Yeah. This wasn't. Is it what you thought it was? Us just sitting around. You weren't sure.
I think you kind of knew how this would kind of come out because I do bullshit a little bit once in a while.
You're a good bullshitter. I think I learned that from you along the way. All right. What I did learn from you is from a young age, you were always good at talking with people. Whoever it was. You used to have big parties over here, and all these people would come, and
That's
was like...
I like people.
Yeah.
As a whole. I like them.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, somebody upsets your apple cart on that idea.
Sure. But that's not the majority. That's not everybody.
And I'm not going to surrender to it.
Yeah. And like you said, you're not going to be sour grapes about, one person, making a bad decision, whatever the case may be to affect you.
My theory, and my wife has supported me amazingly well.
Yeah.
Because she's a tough nut, but she takes a hard stand.
Yeah.
When I paint a picture, like buying this house,
Yeah.
there was never a question from her that would all work out. She didn't say, "Oh, nuts," he wouldn't believe in that. We went through. If this man, the way we read him, that he did want to get out of here.
Yeah.
He didn't want to take a loss. He
Yeah.
wanted to be treated properly. He wanted to like the people.
Yeah.
Who
And he
was
liked
gonna
your
take
family.
over the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
And that I've been in real estate a long time, and I've seen that happen over and over again. Rather than go in there and find everything wrong and start bitching about some small thing, and then it upsets the tenant or the
seller.
owner of the house or something if they're around.
Yeah.
That's why I always hated the owner to be around.
Oh, when
I
you were
showed
bringing
up,
buyers by, you didn't want them around for that?
No, because things are said, and they listen to everything.
Yeah. You said something to me once about, never having a boss. You didn't really like the idea of having bosses. And you said even when you were flying, somebody might outrank you when they come on your airplane, but you're still flying the airplane, so you kind of felt like you were in control. Is that what pushed you towards the real estate approach too, wasn't it? You didn't really have, after you got done there.
I didn't want to work for somebody on a 9 to 5
schedule. Yeah.
I'd work 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
And be happy rather than have some decision on what I'm doing.
Sure.
And we did that.
Yeah.
We did just that.
Yeah.
I had a case, this boss thing, that I'll tell you a short story about it.
Yeah.
When I got back from Vietnam, and I flew 117 combat missions in Vietnam.
Jeez.
In the F-4 Phantom. And I left, I had a chance to come back to my family a month early if I would volunteer to fly an F-4 back to the United States. Because they were all falling apart over there in the jungle, the electronics of them. So they're trying to bring them back because they couldn't maintain the airplanes over there in the jungle under the circumstances. So I volunteered to bring an F-4 back. Well, I went down to Cameron Bay to pick up the F-4, and they said, you can fly this airplane once, but don't fly it over 30 minutes, and don't turn any switches on because anything might happen.
Jeez.
So make sure only certain things work.
Huh.
The landing gear the engine has to run, the landing gear has to come up, it has to be configured for flight. The air refueling door has to work, and the radio has to work. So check all those things out, but don't turn anything else on because the wiring is all screwed up in the airplane. And the fuel has to flow into the engine. And so I flew it. I checked the airplane out. Everything, all the critical to make it stay in the air or fly were there.
Oh.
And I followed the instructions. I didn't play around with everything in the sun on the airplane.
Yeah.
So I landed. The next day, I took off and joined up with 3 other airplanes. Then we joined up with a whole bunch of airplanes and all landed at Guam. Took airplanes. And we all joined up at Guam after air refueling to get down there.
Air refueling with no instruments, that is probably all automatic.
Most of the instruments work, but
Yeah.
most of the things were automatic.
Okay.
But the flight estimates have to work right too. I mean,
Got it.
all the things that tell you altitude are important.
Sure,
things,
sure,
speed,
yeah.
vertical speed.
Yeah.
But mechanical things. So we laid overnight and we got ready to leave. And we were going to head for United States, California, with 16 airplanes, 16 F-4s, and 4 tankers, 4 KC-135s. Each tanker would handle 4 airplanes. to refuel because one tanker can't hold enough fuel. So it took that. So we all took off. The day before we left, there was another group of airplanes leaving from Guam. It was a couple days before we left. Terrible thing happened. There was a group like ours going back, taking airplanes back to the States. And the F-4s, it was F-4s too, I believe it was F-4s, it might have been one of, I don't know, it was an F-4 I think, that group. We're on the runway, and it's dark when you leave, it's 3 in the morning. And the tanker was mistaken, cleared for takeoff, was back behind them on the runway. It's dark, and they ran over the F-4s on the ground. Never heard much about this accident, but it happened. It killed a bunch of people. It was a terrible thing.
They were in the F-4s when they ran them over, or?
Yeah, they ran them over. Jeez. On the runway.
Yikes.
So somebody in the tower got mixed up. People had put all these airplanes, 4 airplanes out on the airplane. They ran over,
made a mistake.
One of the airplanes, and I think it was. I'm not sure all the details here, but it happened. Maybe it was a week before we left. So everybody was a little gun shy after that terrible accident, cleaned it up. So we were the next group. That was part of the group also, doing similar things. So anyhow, all went uneventful, and the tanker took off first. Well, a tanker flies about 100 knots, cruises slower than we would cruise. So we're going to fly formation with a tanker, meaning we had to fly a lot slower than we could. 100 knots is a big difference.
That's a big difference,
so about 100 knots.
Yeah.
And so we would all go in the air, all in the air, going across the Pacific. Tanker over here, 4 airplanes. Tanker over here with 4 airplanes. Tanker over here with 4 airplanes. Tanker over here with 4 airplanes. And after we left the Guam, I started having trouble holding the autopilot. I had it on autopilot. And the autopilot kicked off. And I had to manually handle the controls, because the airplane got very heavy, and that's what kicked off the autopilot. It couldn't hold. There's a sensor in there that you could override.
Okay.
So, but I kicked it off, and so I realized that I wasn't getting any fuel out of the right side of the airplane. Now we're in the middle of the damn Pacific Ocean out there.
So no landing.
All these airplanes, but I got tankers. So there was no reason to try to go back on my own, because I wouldn't have made it back to Guam after getting out there. So I stayed with the group and just went on and refuel before anybody else. And I continued that all the way across the Pacific. Every 20 minutes, approximately, I went on a tanker. So that's how I got back to California. Of course, we made one stop in Hawaii on the way back, the whole group, and I wrote it up. And they said everything was fixed and working. Same damn thing out of Hawaii, couldn't get fuel out of one side of the airplane, which all feeds into a master tank in the fuselage. So stick with it. So when you're ferrying across, there was they have to go to Castle, which is way up in North California someplace, and we're going into the L.A. kind of area, Edwards, I think.
Towards the south,
Anyhow, they left. Well, I've been they were the mothership for me.
That was your lifeline.
And when they left, I looked at my fuel supply and I said, you can't leave yet. Hold on a minute. I said, let me think about this, because I says, I want to be able to get to either go home with you to California and separate from the group, and that would have caused a lot of problems with it. So they held on a little longer with us, and I says, "You can leave now." The one tanker up. All the rest were okay.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we get back to California, and I was a lead position, but I had to fall back to number 3 position because of my situation.
Because the issues, yeah.
So we get over the field, and it was a proverbial thing that we fly over the field real low over the tower and then come up and do a tactical big turn and land right out of that. And that was the plan, but you got to pull G's. Well, by the time I got on a final approach with them, we were all going to do that, and I says, I've got to drop out of this. You 3 go ahead. I'm going straight in because I don't want to pull G's on an airplane. It's a lopsided airplane. If you pull G's, a lot of things you may not be able to control it because I was down on I was a similar problem, but it was flyable.
Okay.
So that's how I got back from, but I volunteered.
Yeah.
I got back early.
A month early, right?
Yeah, I got a month early.
Yeah. You didn't know it was going to be that rough of a ride going back.
Everything I've done has always gone a little awkward, but we managed
But
to
always
deal
worked
with it.
out?
Yeah, it works out in the end.
You got to be adaptable, you know? Things don't work out the way. If you sit down and try to plan things out, sometimes, more times than not, they don't work out the way you planned them, I think.
Well, that was a classic example of a situation that certainly you don't plan for.
Sure.
And you don't, but the Air Force was very wise and how they, because the airplane could, there's enough help there between, even if a tanker went out, we still all could have gone.
Yeah.
Somehow the tanker couldn't have to turn back or something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of safety in the whole airplane. I had another trip that I don't know whether you want to go on with this.
Yeah, no, we can keep going, yeah.
I was at Andrews Air Force Base. I had the greatest flying job in the world because I was flying VIPs and I was giving flight checks. There's about, I don't know how many thousand pilots at the Pentagon, they got to get their flying time. Well, because this is before you could get some of that time in simulators, but so they wanted to send 4 T-33s over to the German Air Force. Fly them over. T-33 won't make, it already has a range of about 800 miles, 800 to 900 miles, as far as it can fly on the fuel. It has no refueling capability.
Oh, okay.
None.
Yeah.
T-33s. And this is back, what year? Let me think a minute. Maybe, 62? 62? I'm not sure. But anyhow, so they said, we're looking for volunteers to fly airplanes over to Europe. Well, I've been flying these check rides over and over.
Yep. You got all kinds of deliveries happen here. UPS, FedEx, or is that FedEx? Oh, it's the post office.
We got a little interruption here.
That's all right. We'll take a pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Peculiar.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're back. Minor break from the UPS man going to the wrong address, but I just wanted to tell you, thanks for doing this. This was fun.
Yeah.
I wanted to, you and I talk. I see you, quite a bit. That's another thing that when I tell people I see my grandfather all the time, they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "We hang out, as a family quite frequently, so we get to have these conversations." But I thought it'd be good to, record one of them and keep track of it and be able to show, future generations of us.
That's right.
I never got to meet your dad or some of your side, the McMurtrie side of the family. I didn't get to meet a whole lot
they
of.
were all around before you got on this earth.
Yeah.
And they're all gone.
Yeah. That happens.
Yep.
Yep. Can't stop it. Any final words of advice? Because one thing for me of doing this was wanting to pick your brain a little bit and kind of see if I can learn a thing or two. I've learned a lot from you my whole life already, but if I could learn a thing or two from this, any takeaways from being 90 and your your time?
Well, we kind of brought that into some of the other discussion.
We did.
And so I can tell you incidences, but I don't have any broad philosophy other than what we've been talking about in my life. Every day comes along. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Whether the sun's shining or not.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well,
sometimes you have to work at that.
sure.
You know, I'm like everybody. You have when I was up north, and we have up there. We have a little house up north. You know. You've been there.
Oh yeah.
It's a little cabin that's
in the mountains.
in the mountains.
Yeah.
It's where I graduated from high school up from Buchanan, Upshur, and went on to Wesleyan there in Buchanan, and have a lot of fond people that have looked after me, and I've looked after them up there.
Yeah.
Now they're mostly gone, but it's been good for us. We wanted to build that place up there for the family, and it's a nice place to go. It's just a nice place out in the woods.
Yeah. You seem to spend more time there. You know, is that something that calls to you to keep spending more time up in the cabin, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
It has, because there's a lot of automobile car shows up there. There's a lot in the summer, in the fall, and early spring. There's a lot of festivals.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of relatives, or my wife's, most of them are on my wife's side up there.
The roads up there are named after her relatives.
Yeah, the name of this road. And so we're about 12 miles out of town, so we have to go get bread or gas. We have to drive about that, but that's fine.
Through the mountain roads is a good time.
Yeah. So
Well, we'll do this again. We're gonna run out of storage space on this thing at the 2-hour mark, and I think we're pretty close to that.
All right.
But we'll do this again. We'll sit down and we'll have some more.
good. I can tell you some tales.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like your tales.
All right.
Are we gonna go for a ride in the car too?
Sure.
Let's do it. All
Let's
right.
go.
Thanks, Grandpa.
All right.